There's a principle we talk about at the Healthy Marriage. I call it the principle of keeping short accounts, and if I'm not mistaken, it's kind of a accounting term or a finance term. When you keep short accounts, that means that if you, for example, if you owe a bill for $100, don't wait until that bill becomes 1,000 to try to pay it. It's easier to pay it and answer it when it's smaller than it is when it gets larger. Well, this same principle applies to relationships and especially for marriages. So when I talk about keeping short accounts, I'm talking about managing our emotions and we're talking about our resentment levels that we shouldn't have any resentment, but I hope you get the picture of what I'm trying to paint here. So before things get out of hand, before you're so resentful that you no longer respect your spouse, you're withholding your affection and attention, before you let things get to that level, deal with it. Deal with things when they're smaller, and it's much easier to manage your way through life. It's the same thing that applies to weight loss. And at the time I'm recording this, we're launching into a new year. I think this is January the 3rd. So we're launching into a new year. Yeah, I see it across my social media feeds and everything, weight loss programs, and let's get back in shape and all of that. If you manage your weight in keeping short accounts and you never let yourself get 40, 50, 60, 100 pounds overweight, it's much easier to deal with. If you monitor, I'm 5 to 10 pounds overweight, or I'm 10 degrees out of shape, let's deal with it there before it gets 90 degrees, before it gets that percentage. So keeping short accounts is very important. Now, coming back to relationships again, I'm not talking about nitpicking every little detail and everything you don't like about your spouse. That's counterproductive, and that's the opposite of what I'm talking about. I'm more keeping short accounts is more about you managing your feelings, your emotions, your sense of if somebody has violated your sense of whatever you believe, maybe they've offended you in some way. Manage that. Yes, that means you talk about issues. Yes, that means you discuss them when they're little so that they don't become big, but it doesn't mean you nitpick. And I hope you can see the difference there, because if you nitpick every little thing your spouse does and you go, we need to talk about this, yeah, I mean, it's going to jeopardize your relationship. Nobody wants to hear that constantly. What I am referring to is you start with you, and I think that's the big point. You start with you and you manage how you're feeling about that. Is this something that's even worth dealing with? And if it is, then you do have a conversation about it, but the conversation doesn't need to become another issue you have to deal with. So I hope you understand that principle, because it's very valuable. And it's very important truth that you can live by in your relationship, so that things don't get out of hand, so that you don't end up in resentment. But the flip side to that coin is, don't nitpick. Don't find fault with every little thing. Pick your battles. Know what you need to deal with, and let's deal with it. The key and the underlying point I want to make is, you can't afford to let resentment overtake your relationship. It will ruin your marriage. We got an article on, can a marriage survive resentment? It can, but I want to tell you something. It's hard work. And this is one of the principles that we can put into place that will help you keep that from getting so big it destroys your relationship. I hope this helps you have the marriage you desire and the one you deserve. This is to your healthy marriage.